Is Thomas Tuchel the right man for England? The German international is going to be the next England manager, the third foreign-born manager of England after Sven, of course, and Capello. And it's been 14 years since we've had a foreign manager. And it's very, very interesting. Let's just talk about the overview of what it means. Firstly, England are going to have a world-class manager going into the World Cup with a group of players, by the way, that he'll know a few of them, especially with Harry Kane at Bayern Munich and a few of the Chelsea lads potentially as well. We have a world-class manager, maybe top 3 in the world behind Pep Guardiola. I think he's ahead of Arteta. I do. I think he's probably behind Jurgen Klopp. If Jurgen Klopp took a job tomorrow, he would be ahead of Tuchel. But that's about it. He's ahead of Unai Emery, in my opinion. A Champions League winning manager managing England. These are the facts. You can debate me on if it's top 3, top 5. He's world class. He could be managing Real Madrid tomorrow. He's that good, in my honest opinion. Manchester United, that kind of caliber. He, in terms of a big club, he is that good. There's no question about that. His ability to get sides to progress through a tournament. He's the most successful PSG manager in European history as well. So they lost the final against Bayern Munich, but he navigated a tournament with the French side who have never been to a Champions League final before. He knows how to navigate through tournaments at a world-class level. He is, by definition, the best possible candidate that England could possibly hope to have for seeing England get to a World Cup semi-final, get to a World Cup final for the first time since 1966. But there are some major, major problems with this deal. And I tweeted about it earlier because somehow England have hired the right man and the wrong man at the same time. And only the FA can kind of do that. It feels a little bit backwards in terms of... We'll talk about the football side of things in a minute. But in terms of the PR, England went from Roy Hodgson to Sam Allardyce, these kind of older, kind of dinosaur managers that were a little bit more just get through tournaments, be a little bit rigid and be defensive. Obviously, it failed massively with Hodgson, failed for other reasons with Sam Allardyce. And Gareth Southgate was brought in to kind of bring a little bit more love back to the 3 lions, to the badge, to the shirt, to the fans. And that happened obviously in 2018 in Russia to a massive extent with heroes like, Harry Kane, Jesse Lingard, Harry Maguire and Pickford, etc. But we gave him 8 years. And I think the reason behind having 8 years of Southgate was to have this kind of English identity. The fact that Lee Carsley was kind of promoted up to potentially replace him, or at least touted for the last few months to replace him, was this kind of English identity, playing out from the back, and having better England coaches. I think the Gareth Southgate thing was a massive kind of magnet to kind of draw English managers through the football pyramid and see that if they're a top-level coach, even though Gareth Southgate isn't, if you're a top-level English coach, you've got a chance of managing the England first team and bringing some pride back to the England shirt. And going with a German straight away after that, there is a massive contradiction there. There is a massive contradiction. Now, if Thomas Tuchel wins the World Cup, then England fans are going to be sat there. It won't care. Of course, no one in the country will care. There'll be an irony if Germany helps England win a World Cup for the first time, or any piece of silverware for the first time since 1966. So there's a bit of an irony there as well, of course. But there's a bit of an issue with, again, the PR side of things. Of going with Gareth Southgate, who had no managerial credence except for relegating Middlesbrough. Staying with him because he's this kind of likeable, charismatic figure. And then when he leaves, you bring in someone that isn't necessarily charismatic. He's very likable. I think Chelsea fans love him, of course. But he can blow up with people. He can blow up with authority. He isn't going to bow down to maybe tradition. He's not going to bow down to anything sentimental to do with England because he's German. So the FA have gone from one strategy to another. If it doesn't work, I mean, I think the issue with disappointment for me as well is it feels short term. I don't see him there for the Euros in 2028, which I can't believe we're even talking about. 2028. It's the 2026 World Cup that I think the FA think he can guide England through and get to a final, and he can manage little situations in the final. I think if Tuchel was against De La Fuente in the final, we would have won. That's how good he is as a manager. But the issue is if he loses in the quarterfinal, if he loses his first group game, if he draws or drops points in Nation League games next summer, qualifiers next summer, at the start of autumn next year as well. He's going to be under huge scrutiny. Capello is a bigger name than Tuchel as a manager, historically speaking. And the pressure he was under after the failure of 2008 was immeasurable. And you could argue he had a frosty communication style, just like Thomas Tuchel as well at points. I think Thomas Tuchel's a little bit more accessible than Capello. But there are some similarities with Capello. I mean, make no doubt about it. And Sven, because Sven had a very cautious approach, a very pragmatic approach to football matches. It didn't work. Let's be completely real. It didn't work with Sven. It didn't work with Capello. I think going with a German now, after 8 years of international pride with Gareth Southgate, and there has been international pride because he's represented England to the highest level in terms of how he's conducted himself with spells, how England have played, knocking sides out on penalties in the knockout stages of the World Cup against Colombia, Germany in Euro 2021, getting to another final in 2024, and then going with a German who can be a little bit frosty. What if he meets Germany in the final? It's just an interesting contradiction that I think the FA have put themselves in. The bigger question is why aren't there more English managers out there that can come in and take the role? Why isn't Eddie Howe interested? He's doing very well at Newcastle. They're currently 7th in the table. It's a damn indictment on the FA. It's a damn indictment on grassroots football. It's a damn indictment on the big six who hire foreign managers and maybe don't give enough trust to English managers. Maybe that's an unfair thing to say. Maybe there aren't enough English managers out there that are available for these big clubs, these big roles. Graham Potter was the big one, and it didn't really do well, did it? It's a very, very interesting situation. The bottom line is the only way to succeed for England, it's a poison chalice. It's one of the biggest jobs in world football in terms of the weight of expectation, in terms of the history of failure, literal failure since 1966 to even lift a Euros trophy, let alone a World Cup. And you bring in Thomas Tuchel, who has such a rivalry because of his nationality. England fans, there's only two real demands of England fans. It's to win a World Cup and it's to beat the Germans. And we've hired a German to try and get us to win the first World Cup since 1966. There is a contradiction there, and there is a bit of contrast there, and that could cause friction. There are some massive bonuses if you look at Thomas Tuchel, though. I know this video is going a little bit left and right, but I don't know what to make of it. On some level, it's the wrong decision, but on some level, it's the best thing ever because he's a world-class manager. 45 out of 46 games Harry Kane scored for Thomas Tuchel at Bayern Munich. He's obviously got experience with Chelsea. Obviously, I know he hasn't worked with Cole Palmer, but he's got experience, in England with a lot of English players. I'm not saying it's going to bring Mason Mount back, of course not, but you never know with kind of the Levi Colwills of the world. I don't know how much he knew of Levi Colwill, and obviously a few other players at Chelsea as well. It's interesting. Will the brand of football at England improve? I'm not entirely sure as well. Very, very defensive. He won the Champions League with a back five. It's a very strange one. It's a very, very strange one. It might be the wrong appointment. Because if England get to the World Cup semi-final in 2026 with an English manager with a philosophy that can be copied and implemented for the next 10 years, I think that's a bigger win than Tuchel taking us marginally closer and we choke in yet another final. And that could be a reality. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I'll see you very, very soon.